presentation is Dr. Robyn Conmy. She's with the US EPA office. Her presentation will be the EPA Office of Research and Development Oil Research Update, the focus on surface washing agent protocol development and salinity impacts on oil dispersion. Dr. Conmy is a research scientist at the US EPA in Cincinnati, Ohio, and leads the oil research area for the Office of Research Development Homeland Security Research Program. Robyn also holds an adjunct facility position at the University of South Florida and a visiting scientist position at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and serves as the EPA member on the congressionally mandated Interagency Coordinating Committee for Oil Pollution Research, or ICOPAR, as we lovingly say, for federal agencies. Robyn, we're glad you're here. Welcome. And
I've unmuted myself. All right. Now for the reveal. Let's see, whenever we have to share a screen, see how long it takes.
It's coming up.
Fortunately, all of my children are not teleschooling today, so we're not fighting for bandwidth in our house. I'm looking to see, here we go. There we go. Well, thank you everyone for inviting me. It's so nice to be here. This is my very first time attending this workshop. So far it's going really great, and the agenda looks wonderful for the whole week. So hopefully we all can do this while we're stuck at home. So my name is Robyn Conmy, for those that don't know me. So I'm at the EPA Office of Research and Development. We have a bunch of different national research programs, and one of them is the Homeland Security Research Program, which is what I'm housed under. And that's where all of the oil spill response support research occurs. So I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that we have so many wonderful partners that we work with. Ones that are in the federal government, the state government, outside the government, NGOs, academics. We have international partners, and really this program has grown from a very smaller, very targeted program in the 80s and 90s into what it is now, which is just this very active and diverse group. And we have a lot of different aspects of research that we are conducting currently. I'm located in Cincinnati, Ohio, although we have Office of Research and Development offices all over the country. So I'm here in Cincinnati. It was a nice, beautiful, snowy winter wonderland for the past 10 days, but now we have rain, so it's getting kind of gross. I'm hoping more snow comes soon. So, actually, you know, I do have a question. So I can see like on my screen, I don't know if you all can see it too. Can you see the full PowerPoint presentation, or are you seeing the bar at the top and on the side with people's names?
We've got, at least on my screen, it's the full PowerPoint, full screen PowerPoint.
Perfect, perfect. So our research area is divided into 3 different categories. And ultimately what we're here to do is to develop approaches for efficient and effective management for oil releases. And we're here, the ORD is here really to establish the protocols that get used by the program offices for regulations and for spill response efforts. And then our big job really is to provide technical support, scientific support to the program and regional offices within the EPA, but also to our federal partners that we have around the country, the different regions and sectors. And so we're here to be where people reach back to when they have questions that can't be answered from those that the practitioners that work on the ground every day. And so we are divided into 3 different areas for our research. And the first is the NCP regulatory support. And there's different needs that change from time to time. Under this current strategic plan that we have, our focus has been on effectiveness protocols for surface washing agents. And now we're just beginning to also look into chemical herders. We also do a lot of the screening for the different reference oils that would be used for the NCP. For so long, we had the same reference oils with no issue. But of course, when Superstorm Sandy took out a number of the barrels of oil that were in reserve, we're now looking at what we need to do for getting additional reference oils. We also work on toxicity effectiveness protocols. And currently myself and Mace Barron, who's the toxicity expert, are on the working groups for the OLIM program office for Subpart J amendments. And so the second area is the behavior, fate, and effects of oil and the spill treating agents that we use. Now that's a huge category, right? And we could fit a Mack truck in that. And our focus specifically within it right now is we're doing some photo oxidation projects with some academic partners and looking at how they disperse, not just with the dispersion effectiveness test for the NCP, but with other dispersion proxies that we'll talk about in a little bit later. We also have a nice Hypersaline project that just got wrapped up. This was funded from BSCE, and it was to look at the dispersion under different salinity regimes, which will be the highlight at the end of this talk today. We also have been funded through the MPRI program. That's the Canadian Multi-Partner Research Initiative, and that is to look at aquatic toxicity as well as biodegradation of herders and surface washing agents with high latitude oils and with species for the toxicity. And so that's a big, our project is 4 years long under that. And so we're coming into our final year. So that's been occupying a lot of our time. And then later on this week, you'll hear from Brian Gillette, who will talk about the in-situ burning work that we've been doing in concert with Coast Guard and with BSCE. And then finally, we're here in this last category of that's the nimble part, right? If we have some tech support, emerging issues, preparedness issues, responses that come up. And so the things that we've been working on of late, you're going to hear scattered throughout this week from our partners at the Coast Guard and at NOAA, BSCE, and that's on our plume detection tools, our slick thickness asset development project, and that's under the MPRI. And then we also do some like working group desktop activities supporting EPPR PAIM. That's for the new low sulfur fuel oil project. And then hopefully the MPRI field trials, which are scheduled to happen this summer, if those proposals and permits are funded, we'll be providing support for that. So today we're gonna do a little bit of a deep dive into our surface washing agent effectiveness work and then also our hypersaline work. So first, let's talk about some SWAs. So you all, I pretty much know what SWAs are. So these are the agents that we would use that enhance the separation removal of the oil. And it's supposed to be from solid surfaces, although as we know, it could be used in sandy and gravel environments too. So the surface washing agents contain a group of compounds, so surfactants and solvents, additives that soften and lift the oil from the surface. And there's technically two types. One is a lift and float and one is lift and disperse. Now in the US, we only want to use a lift and float type because we can recover it. But currently the way most people are evaluating the effectiveness of a surface washing agent, we're not really taking into account whether or not it disperses into the water. And this is important, right? Because we don't have currently on the NCP a surface washing agent protocol, but cleanup operations typically are one of the most expensive parts of a typical spill, up to 90% of the cost. So it behooves us to want to make sure that if that's a large component of the cost and we're spending a lot of time on the cleanup operations and these agents are going to be used more often than any other agent on the schedule, we need to make sure that we have a good way to evaluate which agents would work best in which types of environments. And the US is not the only one. Throughout the world, there's been a number of excellent research organizations who have looked into developing protocols. And in 2020, there was a Chen paper that came out that had a nice review of the ones from Canada and from SINTEF and CEDRA in the US. And basically what it comes down to is we've been working as a community. We've been working on this for 30 years, and we still don't really have one true protocol that we all can agree on. And it's in part because the agents are so diversified. When you look at the breadth of dispersant products on the schedule, we have a handful of products that are there. The mechanisms in which the mode of operation with which they work are not that dissimilar from each other, whereas surface washing agents are very dissimilar in their chemistry, in their performance, their mechanisms, and it makes it very hard to come up with one test that will rule them all. And so in the EPA, about 10 years ago, we had been doing an exhaustive project of looking at using granite coupons and tiles and glass. And so in the end, what we decided around 2015 was our sand basket method approach was the leading candidate. And so we developed a this method where you put 100 milliliters or microliters, excuse me, of oil onto these acid rinsed sized sand baskets, if you will. So it's a metal basket with sand inside of it. And then you treated them with the agent, and then you soak them, and then you put them on shakers, and then you do all these extractions, and you run them on the GC, and you come up with how much oil was removed out of the basket. And then we paired that with the baffle flask test. This is our dispersion effectiveness test that we use. It is a proposed amendment to replace the swirling flask method that you might be more familiar with. And so we wanted to make sure that the products were really going to be lifting and floating versus dispersing. And this video, you'll have to just ignore the sound. It was parsed from something else, but you know, for all of us sitting at home right now, it's kind of nice to feel like you're back in the lab or in the field. So this is a video which shows the treatment of this.
Is mainly water quality issues.
So that is the addition of the oil, and then you put them on these shakers.
For me, started with the oceans, but through my career,
and they're very, very loud when they get started. So that really was there only to make us feel like one day we'll all be in the labs and in our offices and in the field again after COVID. So after we did this really exhaustive round robin experiment, we looked at 12 of the agents. We have 20 that we've been testing, but we did 12 in the round robin. We had 4 operators. We treated them. We tried all these different surface washing agent to oil ratios, and we came up with the stoplight chart, which if you look, we have this green box, and what that means is anything, I think you can see my mouse if I do this too, anything that is over here is an efficient surface washing agent because it's the percent of oil that is left in the sand. So you want only a little bit left in the sand. And over here you have your dispersant effectiveness. So here would be an inefficient dispersant, which would make it a really good surface washing agent. And of the 12 agents, only 2 of them fell into that category, and the rest were not really, either didn't perform well as a surface washing agent, or they were actually dispersing the material into the water. So when we looked at our stats, there's something that we use a lot in protocol development, which is the repeatability and reproducibility. And so that allows us to evaluate how well you can repeat what you're doing yourself versus what somebody else would be doing, like a different operator. And we found that the sand basket approach really did not provide good stats. And so we went back to the drawing board, and we feel like we have done every kind of testing with glass, with metal, trying large drops, small drops, and different kinds of shakers. And what we've settled on is a microscope slide approach inside of media bottles. And so what we're doing right now in the upcoming year is testing out some different weathering times, the way in which we apply the oil to the slides, and then also looking at our dosing, and then adding in fresh water. Everything up till now has been done with salt water. We want to do a freshwater treatment. And so we're hoping at the end of this upcoming year, we will have settled on the method that we think can move ahead for the very detailed statistical analysis that we need to do. So that was our surface washing agent work. And now on to our dispersion effectiveness at varying salinities. You might say, why the heck would we care, right? Dispersants are used for general ocean salinity, but there are cases where we end up with higher salt in the water. And one could be evaporation, like we see a lot in South Florida. Some ice formation that we see in high latitudes that can give us salinities upward of 150 ppt. And then salt deposits, which are all over the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, where there is active oil and gas leases and production, where you can get salinities up to 350 ppt. So we did a large experiment. This was funded by BSEE. We have a federal report on this, and it will be at the IOSC as a paper this year. And we did this also with DFO Canada. So we had a lab part and then a tank part where we used their large tank. So we tested 3 different types of oils, 4 different dispersants, all blind, 2 different temperatures, and salinities between 0 and 125. There had been some really great work done by Merv Fingus in the early 90s looking at hypersaline or high salinity dispersion. but it was with the swirling flask test, which had some, reproducibility issues with the mixing speed being so low. And then also he only had a couple of data points. It wasn't an exhaustive test. It was just sort of a, hey, let's look at this. And so we evaluated our salinity with traditional DE, that's with our baffle flasks, so doing our extractions and GC work, and then also with what we call DE proxies. So these are particle size analyzers, and we also use some fluorescence. And the particle size analyzer can give us what the actual dispersion looks like, the makeup of where we have small droplets into large droplets up to 250 microns. And then also some metrics like the cumulative fraction or concentration that says 90% of what you have in this matrix, in this flask, are droplets above, let's say, 100 microns. And so things like the mean diameter, all of this gives us information, not just on the percentage of oil dispersed, but really what that dispersion looks like. And that's important for your fate and transport of material. And so we have gone through the 3 different oils, and I will warn you right now, these are all the dispersants together. The temperatures are separated, but it's all the dispersants. And so the error bars are not on this just for the sake of simplicity, just to show you, but in the paper it is. And to give you the idea of where we have DE, yes, we have our maximum DE that's around average ocean salinity, and we see a drop off at high and low salinities, but here's the take home message, where you have for ANS, for example, at warm temperatures, the lowest DE values that we saw were about 70%. So even with the high salinities, we're still seeing very significant dispersion. And that follows suit with our concentration of hydrocarbons, with our total volume concentration from the list particle analyzer. And then the mean diameter is the inverse of that, as you might expect. The better dispersion you have, the smaller the droplets. Well, what we found, though, is that when you look at the actual histograms, that's what these are. It's droplet size versus your normalized intensity. Red is for the lowest salinity, and then green is for average ocean salinity, and blue is high salinity. This is just ANS alone. And the dispersions, you can see that the lowest salinity didn't really disperse as well as other ones, but that's, this is what you would expect when you have just oil alone. And when we tried out one dispersant of the 4, we see a shift, right? A lot smaller droplets are being produced, a solid bimodal distribution. The cumulative curves are showing us that there's a larger percentage of small droplets. And then with this dispersant, we see even further, very strong dispersion. But what's important here is this dispersant A and this dispersant D, even though the histograms look so different, they have the exact same DE values with the baffle flask. They were like 80, it was like around 80%, plus or minus 3 or 4%. So what you might get just with the DE values, and you say, oh yes, this is very well dispersed. The reality is you still get a difference in the droplets that you're producing, and that does impact where that material is going or how quickly it can be biodegraded. And this is supported with advanced statistics that we did that I won't get into here. And so we took a subset of we couldn't test everything that we tested in the lab at the DFO tank. We essentially had to add salt to this tank. It was a lot of bags, 50-pound bags of salt that we added one by one to get the salinities that we needed. And we did a series of injections of the oil. It looked like this. Just to give you an idea, this on the left is going to be the injection of just dispersant alone, just oil alone, ANS. And then the one on the right is where we have ANS with dispersant. You can see that sort of cafe au lait latte look to it. And we did a subsurface release, and then the oil is pushed downstream in the tank further when, of course, you have the dispersant versus the larger droplets that rise to the surface on the left. And what we get are a series of these are also droplet size distributions, but not in histogram. It's in line form. This is for oil alone, and this is with oil with dispersant. And the way we did the experiments with these contour plots, we have for 26 ppt, 50, 75, and 100. That's as high as we could get. We couldn't add any more salt to the tank. And so this first red contour that you see, that's just the oil alone. And then a few minutes later, after the oil clears by, then we add the one with oil and dispersant. And what we found was when you get into the tank, so you've reduced the wall effect issue that you might have at the flask. There's still some wall effects, but now we've reduced it. We can still see that we get significant dispersion with the droplet size distribution in the tanks, regardless of these high salinities. So that was really great to know. So what we found was that light and medium oils were very effectively chemically dispersed over a wide range in salinities. Salinity did not hinder at 25 degrees the dispersion in most cases, and some of them were even over 70% for the entire salinity range. So this is a step beyond what the Fingus test first started to do. Now we can see that, oh, we can actually disperse pretty well over a wide range. And the big take home point is that the list particle size analyzer, the DE proxies as we call them, they're really extremely valuable. And I think that as we move ahead with response and thinking about what it means to have oil in the environment where we do treat it, that the DE proxies can give a really quick indication of what that dispersion is. And with that, this is our group. We've got a lot of ORD folks up here. So thank you so much. And I'll take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Robyn. That's good stuff. My heart fluttered there with multivariate analysis. It's been a while for me on that. It's good to see robust data for sure. Lindsay, Jenna, do we have some questions for Robyn?
Yes, we have a couple questions. First, from Bill Adams, do the SWA tests include testing over a range of temperatures?
Yeah, so right now we are doing just at standard room temperature at 25 degrees, but we are planning to also include a lower temperature. That was one of the Board of Scientific Counselors this year gave us feedback on that. And so in addition to the lower salinity, the lower temperature was going to be important too. Yeah, thank you for that.
And a question from Gina Calejo. For the dispersant tank test, were you pre-mixing the oil and dispersant before injecting into the tank, or were separate injection ports used for the oil and dispersant?
Okay,
and
yeah.
Also,
go ahead.
Also, what was the DOR in the tank?
Yeah, the DOR in the tank was 1 to 25. That's what it is for all the DE test too in the baffle flask that we were doing. So we did premix in the tank because it was a pressure release. We wanted, and we needed to raise the temperature because we were trying to keep that oil really warm in the canister. We wanted to also have the dispersant mixed into it at the time of release. So it was not a nozzle that was added to the plume once it came out of the injection port.
All right, thank you. Great work.